Hello class, today's learning goal is I can add and subtract mixed numbers, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first example is 1 1/3 plus 4/5. Whenever we come across an example like this, our first thing that we want to do is we want to estimate what our answer should be. That way we can check our estimate with our actual final answer and see if they're pretty close. If they're not close, then we either estimate wrong or we got our final answer incorrectly, and we can start using our critical thinking to see which one it is. So 1 1/3 plus 4/5. 1, this is pretty close to 1 right here. 4/5 is pretty close to 1. 1 1/3 is pretty close to 1. It's a little bit more than that, and 1/3 is bigger than the 1/5 that would be needed to make this into a 1. So we're going to estimate, our estimate is going to be around 2, a little bit more than 2. It should be a little bit more than 2, so greater than 2. Okay, so let's try this out. What we want to do first is change all mixed fractions into improper fractions. So right here we have a mixed fraction, and how we do that is we have to multiply the denominator by this whole number right here. So the reason we do that is because 1 right here, this 1 right here, can be broken apart into 3 over 3. So we have 3 groups of 3, which we get from 1 times 3. So 1 times 3 gets us this 3 right here, and we add that to the 1 to get overall 4/3. Remember, when we're adding fractions, we do not add the denominators. We just keep the denominators the same. So we get 4/3 plus 4/5. Now, what we have left is this right here, but we cannot add these two right now because they don't have common denominators. These two have very different denominators, so what we need to do instead is make them common denominators, and we're going to accomplish that by multiplying them by a form of 1. Because if we multiply by 1, we don't change the value of anything. We just keep it the same. So in order to do that, we're going to get a common denominator of 15 because the least common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. So our multiplication over here is going to be 3 over 3 to get 15 at the bottom. And over here, we're going to multiply this one by 5 over 5 to get 15 in the denominator. And when we do that, we do 4 times 5, which is 20, and over 15 because we do 3 times 5. 20 over 15 plus 4 times 3 is 12. Make that a little bit better. 12, there we go. And 5 times 3 is 15. And now we have common denominators. So now we can start adding this part right here, this 20 and this 12, add those two together, and what we get left is 32 over 15. Now we're not quite done yet because we need to make this into a mixed fraction. Okay. So our question is, how many times does 15 go into 32? The answer is twice. So we have a whole number of 2. And when it does that, it goes into twice, which gets us 30. 15 times 2 is 30. So what we're left with over is 2 over 15. So our final answer is 2 and 2/15 because 2 and 15 don't have any common factors. So therefore, we don't need to simplify, and we are completely done. Notice how this is very close to our original estimate back up here. If I can get that up there. Right here, our initial estimate of a little bit more than 2. Okay, so therefore we can be very confident that this is the correct answer, 2 and 2/15. Our next example is 3 and 1/3 plus 2 and 3/4. Again, we're going to do some estimating. In our estimate, we got 3 and 1/3 plus 2 and 3/4. So 3 plus 2 is 5. 1/3 plus 3/4 is going to be a little bit more than 1 because 1/3 is more than the 1/4 that is needed to make this into a 1. So again, we're going to estimate 3 plus 2 is 5 plus 1 and a little bit more. So it's going to be an estimate of a little more than 6. So our answer should be a little bit more than 6. Again, we're going to make this into improper fractions. Both of these fractions, actually, because they're both mixed fractions. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10, so 10 thirds plus 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11, so we get 11 fourths. Now we can't go any further until we make these common denominators. We're going to make them common denominators by making it into 12, because 3 times 4 is 12, and our least common multiple between 3 and 4 is 12. So we're going to multiply this by 3 over 3. And multiply this one by 4 over 4. And we can get 10 times 4 is 40 over 12, because 3 times 4 is 12, plus 11 times 3 is 33 over 12. Now we can start adding those two together because they have common denominators of 12. When we do that, we get 40 plus 33 is 73 over 12. Now we need to figure out how many times the 12 goes into 72, and we know that 6 times 12 is 72. We need to figure out how many times 12 goes to 73. Thinking a little ahead here. 12 times 6 is 72, which is really close. We're going to do 12 times 6, which is 72. So we have 6 as our whole number. Then we're going to have a leftover of 1 after we subtract 72 from 73. So we get 6 and 1 12th. And again, that is really close to our initial estimate, which we said was going to be a little bit more than 6. 6 and 1/12 is certainly a little bit more than 6, so we should feel pretty confident about that. Here we have subtraction. We have 5½ minus 3 and 4/5. And again, we're going to do an estimate. Oops. There we go. Estimate. And we have 5 minus 3, which is 2. Then we have 1/2 minus 4/5. And 1/2 is smaller than 4/5. So we're going to have an answer that's a little less than 2. So we're going to have 2 be our estimate, but we know that we're going to be a little bit less. So 2 is going to be greater than what our final answer is. So our final answer should be 1 and some fraction that's pretty close to being a whole number. So again, we're going to do the exact same thing. The process is very similar. We're going to make this into an improper fraction by doing 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 1, which is 11. We go 11 over 2, keeping the denominator the same. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 4 is 19. 19 over 5. And again, we can't go any further without making common denominators. So we're going to make the common denominator 10 because the least common multiple between 5 and 2 is 10. So we're going to multiply this by 2 over 2. And multiply this one by 5 over 5. Again, both of these are forms of 1, so we're not changing the value of either one of these numbers. They're going to be the same value, just written differently. 11 times 5, 55, over 10, minus 19 times 2 is 38, over 10, and then from there we can subtract. 55 minus 38 gets us 17 over 10, which then is 1 over 7/10, and 7 and 10 do not have any common factors, so therefore these are going to be our final answer, which is bada bing bada boom, very close to our estimate of being a little bit less than 2. So here we have 2 2/3. 2 2/3 minus 7/8. Okay. Again, we're going to do some estimating. And our estimate, 2 2/3, the 2/3 is bigger than or smaller than 7/8. So we're really going to be doing, getting a little bit less than 2 here, because we got this part right here getting completely taken out by the 7/8. But we have some more to subtract after that. So we're going to be a little bit less than 2. Our answer should be a little bit less than 2. Oops, excuse me. 2 should be greater than that. So our answer is going to be less than 2. This process is the same. We're going to make improper fraction from our mixed fraction. So 2 times 3 from right here is 6. 6 plus 2 from this 2 right here is 8. So we got 8 thirds minus 7/8. We need to get common denominators. In order to do that, we need to get a common denominator of 24, since that's the least common multiple of 3 and 8. So we're going to multiply this fraction by 8 over 8. And this fraction by 3 over 3. Again, those are both forms of 1, which means we're not changing the value. We get 64 over 24, because 8 times 8 is 64, 3 times 8 is 24, minus 21 over 24. We do 64 minus 21, which gets us 43 over 24. And when we change that into a mixed fraction, 24 only goes into 43 once, because there's 48 hours in 2 days. So therefore, 2 groups of 24 is too much. So therefore, you have 1 and with a remainder of 19, and over that is 24. Again, that is very, very close. Our final answer is very close to our estimate originally up here of, as I've messed it up now, so let's try that again. Oops. Of 2, a little bit less than 2. Okay. Try these last two on your own. Here we have 3.5 minus 1 and 2/5. 2/5 is less than 1/2, so therefore when we subtract, we have 3 minus 1, which is 2. But we have this 1/2 minus 3/4, so our answer should be a little bit more than 2. So it should be around 2, but it should be a little bit more than that. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7, so we get 7. That's a 7. Let's change that. That's a 7. 7 halves minus 5 times 1 is 5 over 7/5. We need to get our common denominators, which should be 10. So we're going to multiply this by 5 over 5 times 2 over 2, which gets us 35 over 10 minus 7 times 2 is 14 over 10. We can then subtract. We get 35 minus 14, which gets us 21 over 10, which gets us 2 1/10, which is close to our initial estimate. Over here, 5 1/8 plus 1 3/5. We got 5 plus 1, which is 6, and 1/8 plus 3/5. 1/8 is pretty close to 0, and 3/5 is pretty close to 1/2, so we shouldn't expect it to give us a whole nother digit. So therefore, we get 5 plus 1, which is 6. So our answer should be a little bit more than 6, maybe even close to 7. We'll say close to 7, but not quite there. So 7 is going to be greater than our final answer, a little bit greater than our final answer. So 5 times 8 is 40. 41, because of this plus 1, so we have 41 over 8. Plus 1 times 5 is 5, plus 3 is 8 over 5. Our greatest common factor between 8 and 5, or least common multiple, is 40. So we're going to multiply this by 5 over 5. And multiply this one by 8 over 8. Which gets us 20. So 40 times 5 is 200. 205 over 40. Plus 8 times 8 is 64. So 64 over 40. Add. And we get 269 over 40, equals, the question is how many times does 40 go into 269, and the answer to that is 4 times 6 is 24, so we get 240 in there. So that's going to be 6, so 240 from the 6 times 40, then 269 minus 40 is 29 over 40, and that is as simplified as it gets, because 29 over 40, these two numbers do not share any common factors. So therefore, our answer, which again is pretty close to our initial estimate of being less than 7, is 6 and 29/40 right here. All right, go and try the practice on your own.